because it's hard for the client to say, look, you've got an inheritance tax problem, say that to their parents, give me some money. Our clients, they want to give some of the money away, but they find it really difficult to do that because they want that security blanket. That's what I found generally, and then it usually gets to a stage where they kind of have to do something about it, because if they're approaching 80, and they're thinking, well, you know, I've got 500, 600 grand plus inheritance tax bill, you know, that's not what I need.
Well, we've noticed a huge change in the last year, 18 months, since the BPR and pension changes have been announced and started to come in. That's caused the real, oh my God, moment amongst our clients, and they're starting to think about it. You know, lots of people, the more we look at it, the more we go through numbers with people, the more we're seeing bigger problems for more people who weren't expecting it.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we're going to do this webinar. I think the changes that are coming in April 27 really giving the ordinary dentist a lot of problems, and that pensions that are getting pulled into the estate for the inheritance tax calculation, which comes in from April 27, is going to get a lot of people, because a lot of my clients have either do a little bit of NHS and mostly private. They build up their retirement funds by putting money into a pension. Usually, you know, it's a personal pension. Before April 27, that was outside of your estate. But because of the changes that are coming in, any defined contribution pension is going to fall within that estate. And just to be clear, the NHS pension, by the most part, will not be included for inheritance tax purposes. However, there are some money purchase additional voluntary contributions which will be included in the inheritance tax. And that's just a part of the pension which you just add additional amounts into your NHS pension. And it sits at the side of that pension as like a little retirement pot. So I think that's going to catch a lot of people out.
Well, it will, because we've had like a decade of encouraging people to fill up their private pension pots, and people deliberately did so, not because it's just tax efficient in the year you do it, which it still is and still will be, but actually as a way to start to pass some of the wealth to the next generation eventually as well. You know, you build your own safety net for the future, it goes to the kids, you're encouraged to do it, and now they're taxing it.
And there's two camps, isn't there? So your associates, historically, you build up a pension pot to use as income. And what I found in my experience is a practice owner has built up a pension pot because of the tax advantages from their limited company, if that's how they trade, but they also have no intention, a lot of them, of actually using it. And that's what's going to really change in terms of the actual plan. You know, what do you do? And it depends on the circumstances, as most things does with tax planning. But it's going to mean that actually we can't just leave it there, because it's going to give us a headache. So that's one thing I've noticed. Another reason we wanted to do the webinar was because there's also that £2 million tax trap, which a lot of people fall foul of, and they don't actually understand it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, everyone knows you've got I assume everybody knows you've got this 325k nil rate band per person. So give away 325k, no inheritance tax. It's uplifted to 500k per person with the house, but what people don't realise is that's not a given. That starts to disappear at £2 million, and it can leave you with the family home caught by inheritance tax as well. You know, it's not too far of a leap to think the home might be worth £1 million these days. You know, it's the government's aim to make property prices continue to go up, I suppose. It's most people's biggest asset. You know, there's lots of places in the country where £1 million house is not crazy like it was when these rates got set years ago. And it's not crazy that you've got a business or other assets. Now your pension brought in there, you pass 2 million, you start to lose it. I think that has a big impact on the size of tax bills. You know, 7-figure inheritance tax bill is not unusual from what we've been looking at.
And all of these things stack up, don't they? And that's why, you know, the average dentist now is faced with a big problem. And in the webinar, we'll go through a case study of what happens before and after the changes in April 27.
I think that's really powerful to see the numbers. And one of the things that always staggers me is HMRC being your biggest beneficiary is not an uncommon situation either, which is just wrong.
And that's always stood out for me. And whenever I'm around a table with a client or with a family, and we look at the beneficiaries and what's actually going to happen on that second death, that's when people say, okay, I don't want this to happen. And like we always say, the very least is, if you make an informed decision for that to happen, that's absolutely fine, as long as you know what you're doing and you know what you've got. Walking
into it blindly is the big problem.
Yeah.
So what we always encourage people to do is understand the size of the problem they've got, then you know where you're starting from, and then you can make decisions, because actually the way you make that number smaller, or if you even bother to make that number smaller, is a very personal thing. It's a very emotional thing, inheritance tax, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it will be different for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a really good starting point. Understand where you are now, understand what you need as well. And I always bang on about this because it's one of the most important questions that I find myself doing with our clients, and saying, well, how much is enough? How much do you need to actually live the life that you want? As well as a little bit for anything unplanned, care fees, kid gets divorced, somewhere where you might need some money where it's hard to plan for. And then you know what you can work with, and then that's when people like myself and you have options to look at solutions.
The thing with inheritance tax, obviously, it's it won't just be for people watching this; it's for everybody. So we talk a lot about passing the wealth down to the next generation, but that includes from your own parents as well. So I think inheritance tax, it's a family thing, right?
Yeah, more and more clients are asking me to speak to their parents and have a chat with them, and at least know what their situation is, because they've heard something on a blog or their friend down a pub about some allowance or some strategy. And I think we talked about the issues with the gift with the reservation, which we picked up in our last webinar. But it's becoming more and more, and I think it depends how comfortable the family is talking about money. And I think someone like myself or yourself can come in and be a bit of an independent and impartial and say, look, this is your position, these are your options. Because it's hard for the client to say, look, you've got an inheritance tax problem, say that to their parents, give me some money and we'll solve it.
You just feel a little bit like you're knocking on the door saying, hey, can I have some of your assets, please? But you can't be thinking about it too soon. I don't think. Once you're starting to be successful, like many dentists will be quite soon in their career, it's so relevant so easily these days. Pensions build up quickly. Business value builds up quickly, and what we haven't really discussed, the BPR reliefs that got reduced a year or so ago, that can bring business value into inheritance tax. Particularly after you've sold it, when actually now it's a cash asset that's fully within inheritance tax. I think you need to plan for these things really early.
Yeah, you do. And time, is the best thing when it comes to inheritance tax planning. If you've got time, you can stagger gifts, you can do you can do some trust planning. There's just more options, which we'll talk about in a follow-up webinar. I think that'd be useful. If you're worried or confused about the changes coming into inheritance tax regarding pensions in 2027, then join our webinar where we'll be talking you through the changes.